I'm
I
s-
think we're live. I'll just wait for it to come through on the YouTube,
yeah, me too.
and then
Awesome. I
you
think I
can.
almost
I
see it.
haven't seen it come through yet. Give it a second.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, go.
It's here. Yeah. Awesome. I'm back. Hello, good people of the internet. We are a couple of minutes late compared to the scheduled time, but I think the community will excuse us for it. Right, Rocco?
Well, I don't think the community is big enough to start a riot yet.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. Okay. Hello, good people of the internet. Welcome to another weekly live session in a Better Way community. Today's weekly is all about retro and refinement. Rocco and myself, we have been sitting with a lot of hard questions, a lot of very vulnerable questions, and we have been sitting with them in a very vulnerable manner. And something that came up to Rocco yesterday was let's just do this live. Let's just show our community how we are actually trying to navigate through this tough phase, how we are trying to not just sit and think about things, but also act them out. And that's what this live video is going to be about. We're going to be doing our retro, we're going to be doing refinement, we're going to be talking about what is the way forward for a better way community. And we hope more people join in today. Even if not live, we hope you get to see this later on and comment, ask us questions, and we can guarantee that we will answer each and every one of those questions. So over to you, Rocco.
Thanks, Chetan. And I'm glad we're doing this, and I'm glad it's just raw and real and vulnerable.
Yeah.
There's a thing that I say often that it goes, authenticity has to be practiced, and it's such a paradox because we're trying to become something. Like for us, we're trying to become thought leaders with a community and a platform that's engaged and functioning in the world. But you can't rehearse how you're going to show up. You can't think in your head what that ought to look and feel like because reality is emergent and you're emergent. And all you can do, all you can do is show up on the day imperfectly and try to speak from that true center, that true place around that true focal point of the calling and the intentionality that we have. And, whatever happens, happens. And that, confidence, I heard Jefferson Fisher say, is not the thing that you have to practice and then go out onto the stage. It's the thing that comes after you went out onto the stage vulnerable and you just put yourself out there.
I love
So
that, Rob. I love that. And in fact, that reminds me of the 20-day life challenge that you had
that's it.
pushed me to do once, that you are doing now, that you've pushed me to do again. I'm going to start to.
Yes,
So,
and I think we'll talk about that in a second, but I just want to
yeah.
frame for everybody, sorry, what we're doing here today.
Hmm.
So we've mentioned before that what we're trying to do is to build a project, a platform, a movement, and a community, and it's centered around a better way philosophy. And this thing needs to live in the world. And the wisdom, both Chetan and I come from a corporate background. That was our professional education in life, was all the things you learn from corporate. And usually the best things you learn from the corporate culture are not the things that they're trying to teach you. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're the things that you learn that people have a lot of ingenuity, and the workers below middle management, the people that are trying to thrive and trying to make meaning and trying to get results, never the bloody leaders. They're never leaders, right? They're always making more of a mess and screwing everybody up and making terrible choices. And the people left to do the impossible with tiny budgets against all odds, they worked out clever ways of figuring out how to get where you're going, even when you don't know the way. Even when you don't know the way. And
Hmm.
it's really at the heart of a better way philosophy is this idea, this philosophy, this mindset called Agile. And Agile basically says you start with an intentionality and you don't overplan or over engineer. You just start, but you break up your life into cycles. Let's call it 2 week chunks called sprints or period cycles. And at the end of every 2 weeks, you stop, you take stock, and you simply ask yourself, geez, if we had our time again, what would we do differently? What would we start doing now? What would we keep doing that's working us is working well? And what would we stop doing? What would we change? What celebrations and wins and triumphs have we had? What surprising lessons have we learned? Good things that we would never have figured out.
Hmm.
And then what's the regrets that we've got? What's the grief that we wish things had worked one way, but they didn't? And then what can we distill out of all of that that's got nothing to do with crying in your into your chapatis. Just how can you look like a leader over the moment that's just been, and try and extract as much wisdom and understanding from that as possible. And that's literally all that's happening here. So we're going to dedicate a bit of it to reflecting back on how far we've come, what we're doing. If one day, if we have a community, this will involve everybody chiming in, but for now it's a community of two.
Yeah.
And so this is us, and this is what we're doing. And half of our time will be invested maybe into looking forward with some of that distilled hindsight now to see how we refine, refine our path forward and our plan on how to get there. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. And let me just add something there, Rocco. Rocco introduced me to this idea of living your life by Agile. I think around the turn of last year, I think it was around September or October when, I mean, I've been in touch with Rocco for close to what 4 years now, man. But we started with Instagram. But turn of last year, Rocco introduced me to the idea of agiling your own life, living your life by sprints, and the cadence that Rocco taught me was around the moon cycle, the lunar cycle. Now, I can safely say that it's been life changing for me. The upgrades that I have had over the past few months have been in no small measure because of the sprint based agiling that I've been doing with my own life, honestly. Like, I've been doing sprints of a month, close to a month. I've been following the lunar cycle close to it. And every single new moon is when I would do my own retro and sit with every question that I've been sitting with, reflecting on how I've grown, what I'm grieving, etc. And really, I've been changing things left, right, and center across my YouTube, across every single piece of writing that I've been doing or reading, everything. And yeah, let's start with this, Roku. Let's start with our first live retro.
Can I share something quickly?
Yes, yes.
Do you remember we had a crack at the beginning of the year building a course? Now, I never released mine yet, but I may still. And if I can share what I'm talking about, this was the gist of it, right? On how to be agile.
Yeah,
And so these are like the building blocks of a life of self-determination. If you want to live your life by design, which is really what a better way is all about, not by
yeah,
default, you have to take charge of that. And you have to, I love to use this with this term, you have to you have to product manage your own becoming. You can't just make resolutions and try your best, and it's all way too casual, right? And it's way too desperate and it's way too unprofessional. Now, in project teams, in businesses, what people have freaking learned to do is you never know what's coming around the corner. You never know how difficult or easy things are going to be. You put all of this wonderful plan on paper. I'm going to travel to Japan. I'm going to learn French. I'm going to do this. I'm going to practice guitar. But when you actually arrive in the moment, you realize it's your ideal self that made all these promises on your behalf. And then you, Muggins, with poor mental health, the craziness of the world bearing down on you,
yeah,
now suddenly you wrote a check in your own name and now you've got to cash it on the day. And you're always going to feel like a failure. You're always going to feel like you're under duress. So the way to change that, right, is to be more professional about this project, to product manage your own becoming. In other words, you don't just leave it to chance, you actually work your way there.
yeah.
So I'm going to share this just for a second, yeah, if
Mm.
that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
And this is the retro part we're talking about here, where you make a little grid for yourself and you ask yourself, what am I going to keep doing? If I had my time again, looking back at this last period of time, let's call it a month, let's
Mm.
call it 2 weeks. What am I going to keep doing? What am I going to stop doing? And what am I going to start doing? But I don't just ask those vaguely. I ask them at the level of myself and my personal development, at the level of my container, my home, my family, my relationships, and at the level of my calling and my passions and my work in this world. Yeah. And then I track my
Nice.
wins and regrets. And the regrets, for example, go into a grief backlog
Mm.
because some things are too big for you to chew through and process in 1 month. But the rest of these learnings, something will come out of that. Something you'll decide, okay, I want to start something, I want to do something, I want to change something, and I'm going to formulate an action. And those actions and determinations go into a long list, a backlog. But you can't just do all of them because that's not smart either. So you pick, you refine, you decide what's important now. Not everything important is urgent, and not everything that's present is important. Yeah. So we pick just what we want to do now, and what we think is relevant for the near short term, and then we put it on a calendar, and we put it in a kind of a simple to-do list that goes to do, doing, and done. And remember, in this to-do list, you can refine things as well. Some things can go up and some things come down. And the key to all of this is running this on a cadence that's supposed to be a little metronome. And just like the segments of a nautilus shell that's growing on the golden spiral, continuously actualizing, it's actualizing because it breaks its life up into these segments we call increments or cycles.
Yeah.
So if you think about anything that you want to, how you want to change your relationship, how you want to work on your career or your personal development or your professional development, if you start thinking about it in terms of agile and product management, you can actually hold yourself accountable and you can be smart about this. And then every single 2-week cycle, you come back to that and you refine it again. And Chetan, you saying you started doing this a year ago on this basic layout, right?
Framework. Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
yeah.
changed your life, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I can, in fact, you said that you never ended up going live with the course. I actually did go live with my course, and I've shared it already. And everything that Rocco has said, in fact, using the diagrams that Rocco just shared, using the Kanban boards and the keep, stop, start lists, etc., all of them are included in the course that we had shared already. And what we'll do as a service to the community is now add the link down below in the description of this live video so that anyone who is interested can actually go through. It's not really a course because it's a mini course. I remember it was
Yeah, it
close
was
to
a mini
75
course, yeah.
minutes, 75 minutes overall. So that's all the investment that's needed to actually get started with things. Yeah, we'll add that link too down below.
Yeah. And this is what we're sitting with ourselves today, right?
Mm,
It's
mm.
these two golden questions whenever you do a retro. If I had my time again, what would I keep doing? What would I stop doing? What would I start doing? And these tell me what I want to do in this next phase or this next arc of my life. They inform me the efforts I need to lean into or the changes I need to make as I product manage myself towards my own becoming, right?
Yeah.
And I do this in a ceremonial way so that I can be in my best self, in my best mind, my best self leadership, my own best friend stance, whilst I'm asking these questions, because we don't want to be idealistic about it either. And then we can ask ourselves, if I had my time again, how would I have liked to have shown up for others and for myself? And this second question tells me how I want to be in my next chapter when
Mm,
I'm in my
mm,
best, when I'm standing in my best self. So,
mm,
what I want to do and how I want to be.
mm, mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So we're going to be thinking about both of those things. Now, the focus that we're applying is not just to ourselves personally, but we're trying to grow the A Better Way project and the community. And one of the hardest things, let's just dive into it now. One of the hardest
Yeah.
things, Chetan, has been figuring out how do we make a, a receptacle, a receiving point, a structure, a place where people can come to and want to come to and can relate to what's happening. Now, the
Mm,
problem is we're on Instagram, Facebook, Substack, YouTube, and each of these have their pros and cons.
mm,
And you and I have different identities on these things for better and worse reasons.
mm.
And we actually don't know a way forward yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we had our time again,
Mm.
what would we have done differently?
I think one of the things that comes to my mind is we would want to be more coherent as a better way rather than Rocco Jaman and Rocco Jaman, Chetan Narang, someone else, etc. So
Yeah.
a single point across all of those platforms.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, the argument I've got for that, or the counter I've got to that, is how would we have known that if we had not gone through all of this? And it had to emerge from somewhere.
Yeah.
None of us knew the right way a month ago or 2 months
Mm.
ago.
mm, mm.
We had to ideate our way through this.
Yeah.
So, what would I do differently? I'd probably be more playful. I would probably try things. But the problem with that, hey, as I say it out loud, is if you try things and you change things, you're making permanent changes in your YouTube channel and stuff like that. And you're rippling these confusing signals out into the ecosystem. But at the end of the day, man, it's not like we have 1,000 people waiting for us to be coherent. They don't even know what we're doing yet. We haven't even come out onto the stage
Yeah.
yet, right?
True.
So did it really matter, you know?
Hmm. I don't think so, honestly. I mean,
Yeah.
the way I look at it is this is day one. This is literally day
Yeah,
one
yeah,
right
yeah.
now,
And
right?
this is how it goes.
Yeah. So, but as of day one, when we are starting here, let's say we're starting to build a community, we're starting to lay out a manifesto, starting to lay out plans of conscious actions for ourselves and for our
Yeah.
community to be.
Yeah.
The different avenues that we already have is a moderately subscribed YouTube channel, a moderately subscribed Substack, um, almost shadow banned Instagram pages, no
But
interaction
pretty
with
poor engagement across all of those.
pretty poor engagement across all of those. Yes.
And I would even
It,
say, objectively, if I look at the quality of your content,
hmm.
there are much worse channels getting much better traction.
Oh yeah.
And in my Substack, I mean, even talking about my own contributions, the content that I've left there is powerful, it's beautiful, it's meaningful. And if I look at so what am I trying to say? I'm I'm trying to say that it's unappreciated, thankless, invisible. So it's not just that there's low engagement, is that there's some kind of tragedy happening.
Hmm.
You know, tragedy isn't just when the bad thing happened, it's when the bad thing is so far away from the good thing that could have happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the meaning that we could be making in the world, I find that quite sad, actually.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have grief about that. You know, I've been talking about that on those lives.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
That sense of despair that I have, that sense of grief that I have, because if we're feeling it, hey,
Hmm.
other thought leaders are feeling this.
Hmm. Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, we've spoken about that crab bucket idea. Imagine, so this is where I want everyone to just stop and close your eyes if you can do so safely while you're listening or watching. And picture a plastic bucket with steep sides, quite a big bucket.
Hmm.
Maybe it stands about as high as a tall man's knee, right?
Hmm.
And it's filled with crabs, small crabs from
Hmm.
the river. And there's so many crabs in the bucket that about a third of the bucket is, or at least half the bucket is just filled with crabs, right? And on the sides, the crabs are trying to claw up to reach this rim, to reach the edge of success
Hmm.
that the modern life is teaching us is just out of reach. Just one more election, just one more vote, just one more payment, just one more uh, spin of the wheel, just one more step out onto the plank, just one more argument on the internet, just one more left swiping right or left on Tinder, just one more date. Everything's just one more thing away, right?
Yeah.
And but the sheer plastic side of the bucket means the crabs, they've got no fingers, they've just got those scratching claws, so they can only ever slide back down again. And the only way they can get up any higher is to climb on top of other crabs. So along the edges of the bucket, there's this wall of crabs climbing on top of other
Correct.
crabs, and even the ones that almost reach the top.
Hmm.
If you're trying to if the one crab is trying to compete and also trying to reach up, it not only has to climb on top of the other crabs to reach up, it has to pull the ones that are already up down
Hmm.
so that it can clamber on top of them and reach up. And that is what modern life is a crab bucket
Yeah.
with an inability to reach the rim.
Hmm.
How tragic and dystopian and cynical is that?
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
Right now, we are trying to spread love into the crab bucket.
Hmm.
But for us, that is only possible if our message can reach that rim. And we don't want to play the scrabbling crab game. We don't want to pull anyone down. We don't want to climb on top of anyone. We want to point out the sickness of the crab bucket,
Yeah. Firstly, yeah.
firstly, and then deal with all of that argument that comes because all those things that your friends have argued to say why it's naive and idealistic are the voices that we speak with inside ourselves anyway.
True, true. Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's not just that they're negative, they're trying to not be caught for a fool,
Exactly.
you know?
Totally relate to that.
And we all sit with the same thing. So, I mean, what a massive, important project. What an impossible reality to try and do it in.
Hmm. Yeah. Tell me about it, man. I mean, we've talked about this, I think, in the previous one as well. Uh,
Take back the
We
internet.
take back the internet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just imagine your favorite thought leader. How difficult would they find if they have a reach right now? Imagine
Mm.
they don't. Imagine they're just starting, no PR, no gimmicks, no team, nothing, and they're starting now. Imagine how difficult they would find to reach you, of all
Yeah.
people, and
Yeah.
they had an impact on your life. And
Yeah.
if they're finding it difficult to reach you, just imagine how much wisdom are we losing out on the crap bucket, really. And then not
That's
even
it.
to talk about all the entertainment, all the distractions that people are serving all over the place,
That's
serving
it.
multiple reels every single day, etc.
And you
It's
know,
crazy. Yeah.
there's that myth that says, oh, if you create cream, it'll rise to the top. No, it won't. It won't. It won't rise to the top.
Mm, mm,
What rises to the top in your Instagram feed?
yeah.
Is that the cream?
Mm, mm, mm.
It
That's
isn't, man.
that's almost an optimistic argument, right, Rocco? The one that says that the cream will rise to the top. It's almost a naive optimism in some sense. I appreciate being optimistic, but I would much rather appreciate being realistic.
Yeah.
I mean,
Y-
you can say
y-
that things are rosy or things will get rosy, so we don't need to do anything. Or you can say that we don't need to do anything at all because nothing changes. But a
Yeah.
realist says that, things change, but they change via human beings like us. So we need to act. We need to consciously act and make the change happen.
That's it.
Otherwise, it's never going to be the cream that rises to the top, of course.
No, because we keep churning the cream in the crab bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, what we're really reflecting on is our whole, it's not just the last 2 weeks, it's our journey. Because the only reason I got onto Instagram in the first place is because I had a sense of calling. I had an insight to philosophy. That's where we met each other, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted to be sharing something of substance for a reason. And I wanted
Mm.
to be a leading light. Let mine be the lamp that lights the way. Let mine be the hand
Mm.
that reaches down. And I'm trying to tell people that the level of wisdom and excitement that we're sharing is kind of immature.
Mm.
It's kind
Mm.
of juvenile. It means nothing. Do you remember there was that friend we had in America? He was always posting stuff. Beautiful post. He was a great artist.
Mm.
But it was always just like cheap sweets at market.
Mm.
This one, then that one, then that one. Nothing was digested. Nothing was internalized. Nothing was acted upon. Nothing was integrated.
Mm.
And yet that was the reality of Instagram. And then we tried and tried and tried every trick in the book. We tried sharing hashtags. We tried sharing each other's content, commenting. We tried um,
Yeah.
improving the look, fixing our pages. And that whole effort was a fucking game that I was pulled into.
Mm.
We even paid for advertising. We tried promotions.
Yeah.
The whole thing is just a rotten, cynical game. And my account went backwards. The more you speak truth, the more plainly you speak, the less traction you got. If you start speaking up against the algorithm, you get
Mm.
shadow banned.
Mm.
And then this movement, you can't beat influencers. You can't
Mm.
beat these kids with nothing going on in their lives. All they do is just figure out ingenious ways to game somebody's attention. We didn't want to play that game. And
Mm.
I was naive, man. I was naive. I kept believing that there were people like me out there and that they would look at powerful messages and just go, yes, this feels resonant to me. Now
Mm.
there's 3,500 people following that account.
Mm.
3,500 people following that account. That's
Mm.
a great number
Mm.
to have. Imagine going out of your house and saying what you feel is of most value in the world and on your heart, and there's 3,500 people
Yeah,
listening.
yeah,
That's powerful, right?
yeah.
But how many of those 3,500 people
Exactly. I
even
was
see
about
the
to say,
content?
don't even talk about engage, even see, even receive it on their feeds. They
Right.
just don't. Yeah. And it's probably my lived experience with my YouTube channel too, Rocco. I mean, I have played the game on YouTube. Honestly, I
Oh
have.
my God.
I've uploaded so many
Almost to the
videos
point
with.
of selling yourself out in moments,
I
just
have done
trying
that
to,
too. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I have, as of today morning, 7,500 subscribers there on YouTube. How many of them are tuned into this live video today? A couple maybe, right?
More
And
than I've
then,
got. Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
people engage. Some of them do. I would say probably a few hundred do at times. But even here, even on YouTube, it almost feels like a fool's game sometimes to me. And honestly, man, I don't know if we could have done something differently to actually gain a lot more traction quicker. I don't know. I don't know. We had to do what we had to do. Like you have to talk at your level of understanding and your level of wisdom that you want to share. You cannot really be talking in someone else's voice and remain authentic. I remember when I started
Dude,
talking on YouTube,
that's the
Rocco.
theme that's coming up here today.
Yeah. Mm,
Because yeah, carry on going. I wanted to
mm.
talk about that. Yeah.
Mm. I was about to say that someone had commented on one of my videos. I don't remember the exact video, but someone had actually told me, dude, you won't ever get too many subscribers because what you're talking about, maybe it's important, but people just don't want to understand it. And even the ones who want to understand it will never see your videos. It was on one of my YouTube videos. And it ran a chill down my spine because it was a truth that I knew too. You know, it's and that guy actually equated me to JK. He said, you know how JK's channel does not ever have too many subscribers, does not ever have too many comments, or I mean, it has a lot more compared to what we have right now. But the point being that he talks in a tone which a lot of people don't really resonate with directly.
It
And
makes
and
me, there's this idea that I connect with called sacred anger and sacred grief,
mm,
because I know that somehow that's fundamentally wrong. I'm not a fool about how the world works,
yeah,
but somewhere deep inside, in a place that's not foolishly naive,
mm,
just a place that's hopeful that human beings are better than
mm,
the way that they're showing up,
mm.
that if you speak and broadcast your signal and come from the heart, that the universe will reward you in some way. But life kindly keeps
Says
saying
no.
no to us until we stop knocking for a yes outside the wrong door.
Yeah.
And one of the lessons I can say that I've learned from all of this is the closer and closer I get to something that feels right in me with this project and with me speaking, is is that story of that Hebrew teacher Zusha. He was
Mm,
a Kabbalist and a mystic and a teacher, and on his deathbed, he was very fearful, and his students all gathered around him.
mm,
And they said to him, Master, why are you so fearful? Surely, when you go to meet your maker, you're going to be held amongst the greats. You spoke to us, you reminded us of the lessons of Moses and of Solomon and of David. And he said, I'm not afraid because I misrepresented the truth or because I misguided anyone. I'm afraid because when I meet my maker, he won't say to me, Zusha, why were you not more like Moses? Why were you not more like David? He will say to me, Zusha, why were you not more like Zusha?
oh,
Why did
oh,
you not have the courage to be the unfolding gift that you came here to share, to become the invitation and the welcome that you were denied by life? We've each come here for a reason. We've each come here for a reason.
yeah.
And we never make full contact with that, the power of and the potency of our gift to the world, while we are trying to stand in somebody else's shoes, the way somebody else walked onto the stage, speak in somebody else's voice, and speak in a way that we're doing it to try and impress, to try and persuade, not falsely, just because we've been convinced by life to say that the only way that you get a ticket to this game of speaking and thought leadership is if you sound like JK, if you sound like
Yeah.
Alan Watts, if you sound like.
That's it. That's it.
But
Yeah.
Alan Watts did not sound like Terence McKenna, and Terence
Exactly.
McKenna
Yeah.
did not sound like
Yeah.
Martin Luther King. These thought leaders are different. They're different. And thought leadership has got to do with how you lead the thought and the reflection and the understanding in yourself and in others and what leads your thought. Yeah. And that's got nothing to do with emulation of somebody else. Yeah.
So Rocco, one of the things that is turning up for me right now as we're speaking about it is the
Yeah.
fact that we live in a day and age where we understand, you and me, Rocco, that's it. That is, we understand that we are reaching the thresholds of the paradigms that human beings have been operating under. That is the fundamental reality of 2025. And what that the action that invites me, that invites out of me, is really to speak to the truth of the moment and speak to the truth of how human beings can transcend the paradigms that they are locked in as of now. I think that
Mm.
is one of the fundamental aspects of the thought leadership that I would want to engage in. Like we talked about, we have played the game of Instagram and YouTube, and we know we have had very moderate success there. We will still keep talking on YouTube and on Instagram and on Substack and on Facebook and via newsletters and everything. But the what we want to be targeting should really be what we are called out to do. And in that sense, I think that can be one of the overarching things that we think about. How do we help people transcend the paradigms that they are locked in? Because it's necessary at the moment. That's the
So,
necessity of the moment.
how to bring all of this back together for me. So, if I was listening in on this retro and I was saying, okay,
Hmm.
these are the lessons we've learned, because that's a macro scope of this little microscopic view of the last couple of months, right? Of us trying to do this thing, and
True.
and the lesson is actually the same, is
Hmm.
we're still trying to talk to people who we're trying to talk to versions of us, and we are already convinced, we are already persuaded, we are already brought into the project. It's everybody else who thinks that they are still going to find their salvation and their meaning in the crab bucket.
Hmm.
You're still convincing yourself that somehow that's all going to be okay in the end and someone's going to come along and it's going to be rosy and it'll work itself out. But there's a nagging voice in you that's growing every single day, every single time. You feel sick from doom scrolling. There's nothing positive. You're not looking forward to anything. That despair is climbing in you. And I'm not here to preach despair. I'm here to wake you up to the despair that you're trying to look away from inside yourself all the time. And I'm not going to do anybody or this project any favors by trying to sugarcoat and gently coax you across the line. For fuck's sakes, open your eyes, wake up to the reality that is showing up. The question you now want to ask yourself is, how am I going to face this moment? Eyes wide open? Or am I still trying to burrow back into the illusionary bullshit that I was sold as a young kid that already broke my heart, already took my promise from me? Yeah. And I've been doing these meditation reflections, and I've just been doing writing in different archetypes almost, because some poets speak gently and some prophets speak stridently and strongly. And I was wondering if I could read one of these. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Go on.
And so this is me talking to myself. Um, and there's different versions of this.
Hmm.
So you know who Charles Bukowski is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He was this washed out bum that just eventually found his authenticity and said what needed to say, and it wasn't pretty.
Hmm.
And it says, look, the world does not care if you find your voice.
Oh.
Most people never do.
Hmm.
They drink it away, they shop it away, they scroll it away. They bury it under small talk and paychecks and the slow poison of pretending. But you now are becoming cursed with the weight of seeing and feeling too much. You
Cursed.
see the
Wow.
you see the children that are not yet born in the world,
Hmm.
and you feel the bones of the dead. You feel the bones of the dead that we're
Hmm.
walking over so numbly and bluntly. And you hear the old songs in the dirt. That's your problem. That's your problem. That's your curse and that's your gift. The world will not hand you a stage. The world will not hand you a stage. The world will hand you a bottle or a coffin or some nice quiet desk job to shut you up and placate you. and plug you into the battery chicken feed that everybody else is in. You have to take your voice. What is your voice? Your voice is how you make a mark in this life. That's different to everybody else's mark. It's your voice. The world will not hand you a stage. The world will hand you a bottle or a coffin or a nice quiet desk job to shut you up. So you have to take your voice. You have to scrape it together from the broken parts of you that never stopped hurting. Because it's that pain and that anguish and that frustration that you have at the wrongness of the world that, there's a saying that says, I made a parachute out of all the broken bits in me, you know? You have to drag it out of your ribs like a half-starved animal. And when you speak, it will not be pretty. It will not be clean. It will be bloody and it will be real. And the right people, the only people who matter, they will know.
Oh man.
They will know that you're the real thing, not because you said it loud, but because you said it true.
Mm, mm,
So write the thing down, say the thing out loud. The soft ones are dying every day in their own silence.
mm,
Don't join
mm,
them. Stay ugly, stay honest, and stay human.
mm. Oh,
And
you
I've
know.
got about 6 or 7 of these, and I'm going to share over time. But they're kind of like I'm pumping my own tires here. I'm
Mm,
revving myself up. I'm giving myself a pep talk.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
I've created a bunch of voices: Leonard Cohen, Charles Bukowski, Mr. Rogers, um, Samuel the prophet from the Bible, Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass. You know, those archetypes live with us. We know the kind of ripples and impact they had when they spoke. We know the kind of energy they had. They were not all gentle.
mm.
They were not all kind. They were not all here to make nice, but they were not bitter. Yeah.
Oh man, that's such an important word, Roku, because this bitterness is
Yes.
something that has always, right from the start of when I started on sharing on Instagram, this is what I would feel. The world is getting so bitter, so cynical, so hateful towards every single thing. I mean, people are bitter towards people who do not want to be bitter, you
The
know?
most powerful thought leaders that everybody benefits from, that are widely loved and respected and appreciated, they have one thing in common. They were not all gentle, they were not all visibly compassionate, but not a single one of them was bitter or petty.
Mm, 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 mm,
Not a single one. So if you want to marshal your own thought leadership, if you want to find your own voice, you have to do you have to bring about or make room for the kind of symptoms inside of yourself that are the symptoms of a powerful thought leader, because you must do what clever does, right? And every single one of those thought leaders, whether it's Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King, they all were dealing with terrible injustice in the world: difficulty, pain,
mm,
suffering, grief,
mm.
loss of hope, worried about the next generation, destruction of the environment, just 1,000 things to worry about. And not one single one of them was bitter.
Rocco, I want to challenge that slightly. Not challenge because we are talking at the same resonance, but challenge in the sense that this is something that turned up in me when you were saying that no single leader that we appreciate is bitter. That's sort of changed in the modern world in some sense because because of all the different voices that are rising up on Instagram
Yes.
and YouTube, etc., there are a lot of people who followers appreciate as leaders, but they're extremely bitter people who are
Oh, it's because it's mirroring the bitterness in their hearts.
exactly
That's not leadership.
exactly. And that's where I wanted to say that we need to understand fundamentally that if we are actually following leaders who are bitter, they're not really the truest leaders that we could be following. And that's a challenge to anyone
Well,
really.
where are they going to lead you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Bitterness leads to bitterness.
But there's that tribalism aspect, right? I mean, I have my friends who will actually challenge this and say that these bitter leaders, the ones you're calling bitter, will actually keep us safe, will actually save us from the other side. And that's a practical aspect, but we know where that game leads.
Oh, fuck.
That game leads to fights, that game
You
leads to
know,
wars.
there was, I don't even know how to argue with that. except to say it's exactly how somebody who doesn't understand what leadership and future looks like,
Mm.
that's how they reason and they argue. It has to be us versus them. Somebody has to win. There's
Exactly.
no winners, man. There's
Yeah.
no winners. You just perpetuate, read like the Mahabharata.
Mm.
You're
Yeah.
just perpetuating the cycle of retribution.
Mm.
You know, that man, that I think it's Algonquin First Nations, North American indigenous
Mm.
story about the great peacemaker.
Mm.
His grandmother had prophesied that he was going to become the peacemaker of the nations, and he actually spent his life devoted to that cause of bringing all those peoples together. And then the thing that was prophesied was he was going to plant this white pine tree as a symbol of peace. And on the way to doing that, he had brought all the nations together.
Mm.
And he had started to forge this great peace. And right before the moment of this triumphant moral victory, right, for humanity that everyone could benefit from, not everybody benefited from the war. To keep everybody safe is to perpetuate, in that small sense, would have just been to perpetuate more battles, more war, more
Yeah.
retribution, more vengeance, right?
Yeah.
The only way is to transcend that. It's the only way to transcend the cycle of karma, the cycle of birth and death, the cycle of retribution, the cycle of cause and effect, is to practice that which transcends such cycles. Yeah?
Mm.
Gratitude, forgiveness, love, beauty, grace. And on the eve of this triumphant moment, there's this embodied spirit of bitterness. It happens
Mm.
to be a female spirit of vengeance,
Mm.
the angry mother for all the sons that have been murdered, all the spilled blood, all the ungrieved children. That gets worked into a single entity, right? And
Mm.
she's so angry that she's got snakes in her hair.
Mm.
And, you know, in our mythical appreciation of even the Hindu stories, we can recognize this character, right? And she kills his wife and his children. The peacemaker, she kills his wife and his children. And
Mm.
so the most natural thing on earth is you think he's going to go now and
Kill them.
you
Kill
know,
her.
avenge them. And instead, he finds her and he reaches out and he combs the snakes from her hair. And he invites her into this peace, and he reasons to himself that I didn't come this far to only come this far. Yeah.
Mm.
If I'm really to ever forge a lasting peace, if I'm to live up to that gift and that calling and that invitation that I came here to be in this life, it has to begin with me, even when it feels like injustice. Now, that breaks the prisoner's dilemma.
Mm.
Sure, we can be cynical and we can say, but if you can't understand that, then this message is not for you. Then you need to go find your guy, sharpen your sticks, and figure out which enemy you need to hate next.
Mm.
Because somebody else is telling you who to hate. You don't really have a problem with other people. You don't even understand what's going on. You're being told what to think. But if you don't think like that, it's not meek or lame. That's vulnerable. That's strength. That's true strength.
Mm.
And you don't unite people and create a better future for our children by sharpening sticks. You just don't do it.
Yeah.
You just perpetuate a cycle that they're going to have to inherit and live again. Somebody has to
Mm.
go first. Somebody
Yeah.
has to reach out and comb the snakes from the other person's hair first. And if you don't have the courage to do that, I do. I
Mm.
do. Like, and I want to work with people that do. And that's what I want to plan for us to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? That doesn't have to be naive. We have to find a way. We have to find a way to
Yes.
make
Yes. Yes.
that
Yes.
doing. And
Yeah.
it's not going to be silly or lame or idealistic or
Mm.
immature or naive, because that can't be a better way.
Mm.
That's the opposite of a better way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But our test, hey, as a human race, is going to be crisis.
Mm. Mm.
And when enough crisis is visited upon us, we'll eventually start waking up one by one, bit by bit, wave by wave, that the only way we get out of this crisis is by pulling together as a single people. And I don't mean
Yeah.
in the whole globe, I just mean in the place that you're standing at the moment, whether that's online, whether that's in your neighborhood or your village or your family, whatever that is. And I know it seems impossible now. Everything is hard in the beginning. Everything is hard in the beginning.
Hmm.
But if we're not trying to lean that way, and if we don't believe that that's possible, then it's not possible.
Hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, all said and done, Rocco, you and I could sit together and come up with thousand and one reasons as to why this won't work. Honestly, we can. Like, can't we do that? We can do that. A thousand and
Well,
one
I'm
reasons as
afraid that the 1001 reasons are more prevalent, and that's all
yeah.
the more reason why I need to try and find a better way, because it's not, it
That's it.
doesn't make it less relevant, it makes it now more relevant.
More relevant. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, Rocco, two questions.
Yeah, yeah.
What will we do differently from now on? And how will we do things differently? How will we show up?
So so I think what I want to do is I want to create something that people can engage with, like a 20-day live challenge.
Hmm. So, by
That's
that you mean you and I doing these lives
do it,
individually?
but we also
Yeah.
encourage the community that's listening to jump on board, join the community, be part of this, and come and do this for yourself. And what I'll help guide and navigate, both of us can do this, because now what the theme is that's emerging very clearly now from this is finding voice. Finding voice, the place that you're speaking from. Connect with your grief, connect with your frustration, connect
Hmm.
with your wishes, and your wish to be more authentic and to be more empowered in this life. All of that requires you finding your own voice, finding your own boundaries, standing your own way, practicing your own authenticity. So, whatever it is, I think it's that. It's going to be leading from the front vulnerably, speaking about leading from the front vulnerably, inviting other people into the same process, and let them witness firsthand how that alchemy, that transformation can work in their own life. You've done it before, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The fact that you're now making, if anyone's watching this and you've seen Chetan do a video, right? He's a consummate host. He just speaks from the heart fluently. Everything's nicely polished and present
Always.
and digestible. No, it is, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't just get there. You had to go through that awkward phase of sounding awkward and stumbling over your own words
Yeah.
and finding your own cadence. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what the power of that 20-day live challenge is. It's not for us to go make more noise on Instagram. No, and it's not for anyone. It's for us. It's
Hmm.
for us.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to do something like that.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And you had two questions. What are we going to do and how are we going to do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I'd like to, instead of tell people, show people. This is a
Hmm.
way of showing people, and how we can show them is by demonstrating it ourselves and by bringing them into the process. I'd like that. So that's what I'd
Hmm.
like to try in the next sprint. I'd like to
Hmm.
try one experiment, forget all the other noise that we're doing. We're trying to do a million things, trying to boil the ocean.
Hmm.
We've figured out some clarity now on the platform we're going to use going forward. So it's going to
Hmm.
be Substack,
Hmm.
and it's going to be a single YouTube channel.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it overnight, but
Hmm.
slowly over time, Chetan's YouTube channel is going to become a Better Way YouTube channel.
That's
And
it.
we're going to syndicate both mine and his videos and lives and stuff on there. But we're going to try and focus all of our talk and effort and live videos and even my tarot readings, etc. It's all going to be into this process of showing up vulnerably, connecting with your own authentic grief, frustrations, longings, yearnings in this world. Can you give yourself permission to make contact with that which you yearn for most in the world but can't find, and are so afraid to face the fact that you might be invited to create that or be that thing in the world? Yeah. 20-day life challenge is a way for you to build this awkward stepping stone bridge to actually get to the far side and get closer to yourself. Let's do that. What do you
Hmm.
think?
I'm in for that, Rocco. One
Okay.
of the things that I will add is I've done the live challenge before for 20 days, and it really did change a lot in me with regards to how I showed up in front of the camera and everything. One of the things that I want to do differently this time is I want all those 20 days to matter a lot more than they did previously. That was maybe because the first time around I did it for myself. This time around, I want to do it for myself and also for a better way. So, what I want is in the beginning or at the end of every single 20-day, every single video that I do across those 20 days, I want to be able to direct people to a place where this is how you know that you're a part of a better way community. If that's a buy me a coffee page, I'm fine with that. If that's a newsletter page where people can subscribe to,
Some form of
you can,
pledge, engagement, or commitment. Yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
That's it.
I
Because
just want to make one point very clear. Chetan is doing this for the second time, right? And I'm
yeah,
doing this for the second time as well. When you do it for the first time, you don't have to lead with a cause. You just have to find your voice. You just actually have to do it for yourself the first time. The
yeah,
second time you do it, you can now bring in discernment and intentionality and a bit of structure. Just a little bit of
mm,
structure. This
mm,
is how you level up in the game, right? So you
mm,
start off just raw and real and you let it go.
mm,
When that is over, you do your work in the world, and maybe a year from then, you do the, or 6 months from then, you do the practice again. And this time, you develop a little bit of structure. You tell people what's happening, why you're doing it. You're pointing to something intentional and meaningful. You're bringing that presence in, and you're helping people who dial in to be present and
mm,
discerning. So you give them some context about what's happening. And the intentionality comes in as to what you're pointing it to. Either work in yourself, work in the world, work in themselves, something like that. So this is a game that can level up with you as well. But Chetan and I will be doing it at a blue belt level, and we invite people to come in as white belts and just have fun and try it out. And
mm,
it's scary. It's
mm,
scary, right? But it's also exhilarating. And I heard such a wonderful thing from Jefferson Fisher. He said confidence is not what happens before. He said confidence is what happens after you take that courageous risk and you assert yourself.
yeah.
So I think that's grand, man.
Rocco, I received two messages in the YouTube chat. One is from
Yeah.
Prachi, and one is from someone whose handle is the fledgling, and they're both up for it. They're both up for the challenge.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent. I love to hear that. Now, I don't think I wouldn't even know how to see. I don't know. I'm not getting any chats, but that's excellent.
yeah,
I'm excited about that. Yeah.
mm,
Um, so that can be our first invitational, right?
yeah. That's it.
And
Mm,
and also what we'd like to do
mm,
is in your 20-day lives, guys. The first one you do, you mention that you're accepting this challenge and that you don't know what you're doing, and it's all going to be raw and real. Yeah.
mm,
And then at the end, I want you to watch day one again.
mm, mm, mm,
And I want you to do a 10-day checkpoint and reflect on how far you've come and what you've learned. And at the end, I want you to give a synopsis or reflect on how much the process changes you as well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And one more thing that I would like to add is if you could link that back to a better way
Oh, you
community or a
have to,
better way
because if
YouTube
you're part of
channels.
the community, you've got to make it work for everyone, right?
Yeah,
Many
yeah,
voices, one message.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're all doing this for a better way. It's not just for Rocco or I. Yeah.
That's 100%.
And Rocco, we need to set up something for a better way community to reside in. At least for now, even if it's not a proper community, like we have talked about before, perhaps it needs to be at least the Substack page where people who cannot
It's
actively.
ready.
Mm, oh yeah,
It's
the
ready. And
Substack
now
page
we
is.
know exactly what we're saying. So now we can make the post, we can start the chat, we can start the thread, we can get people talking
Mm,
and sharing. Yeah.
mm, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm. What else, Rocco? What else do you have in your mind
No,
right now?
I think let's less is more. Yeah.
Mm,
I think what we were talking about was our project over the last few months, but it
mm,
turned out to be our project over the last few years actually.
yes, yeah.
And what's come out is what would we like to do better next time? I think we're learning that we need to come, the only thing that's going to beat the noise in the world
Mm,
is resonance,
mm,
clarity of signal. And that clarity doesn't come from how many filters you put on your YouTube channel or hashtags. It comes from the filters that you remove off yourself. Yeah. The
unlearning.
performance that you just throw it away. Stop trying to show up in some kind of right speak.
Mm,
The
mm,
corporate world teaches us that there's a right way to speak to people. And if you're doing that kind of performance, then you're appreciated and approved. And we lose our truth in that. And it's
yeah,
it's fucked. Right.
yeah,
So we wanna try and remove that. And let's just stay with this one simple, clear vector moving forward. We can make it more complex later. Yeah.
Mm, mm,
What do you think?
yeah. Yeah. I think I'm going to start with this too. Perhaps tomorrow. My
Yeah.
first live tomorrow. Yeah.
Can I close us out with one more of those reflections?
I think so, yes. Let's see if we have any other message. Oh, Prachi is definitely in for it, man. She's given another yes to us. So that's perfect. We're looking forward to this, Prachi. We're looking forward to this, the fledgling. I hope you also tell us your name because we don't want to be calling you the fledgling. Okay. Yeah, Rocco, go on. Over to you.
Just two things quickly. So, for the folks that are interested, just a little sneak preview of what we're going to share with them as they go through this process. So it's going to help them find what they want to speak to and how, right?
Mm.
So, I created this. Can you see that, Chetan?
Yeah, can see. Oh, yeah.
So it's the map of Dharma, but it's based on the chakra model. Now you don't have to believe in chakras. All that you have to understand is that there's a clever way to understand how our consciousness is not just a singular thing, right? There's a part of our consciousness that's got to do with how we think about our calling and our Dharma. There's a part of our consciousness that has to do with our understanding of the world, our philosophy on life, yeah? What our voice and message is,
Mm.
what we stand for in this world, what mark we think we're here to make, what our relationship with leadership, compassion, beauty is, yeah, what our intuitions are, how we get nurtured, what makes us feel vital, how we get sustained in life, what our relationship is to intimacy and vulnerability, what our core identity is, yeah, and what our connection is to life, to relationship with danger, with injury, with discomfort, with loss. And this is to do with our ancestral heritage and our biological heritage as well, yeah? Cultural and physiological. And this is a way for us to map me, who I am, because who I am is what I care about, yeah?
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
so what we're going to do is we're going to do a little mini video
Mm.
and share a resource and a post on Substack guiding people. I'll do one, Chetan will do one, so you can get an example of how to sit with these questions. And
Yeah.
then anyone who takes on this challenge, we invite you to fill out this questionnaire yourself so that you can explain your own, you can become intimate in conversation with that reality that you actually are, but you haven't verbalized it maybe, and this helps you just lift it up and verbalize it.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm. Mm.
making
Mm.
sense.
Mm. Yes, yes, Rocco. Yes. We
So I
need to
think
have.
that's
This needs to go out as a dedicated video too on the YouTube channel, man. This is powerful stuff. Powerful,
yeah, it
powerful
is,
stuff.
and it's not just something cute. It's I sat and asked myself. I didn't realize it was all about finding voice and finding what mark I want to make
Mm.
in the world because I thought I knew all of this, but I don't really.
Mm.
And it's until I can get that clear
Mm.
at that
Mm.
granular level, I haven't asked the question properly. And even
Yeah.
that's not the whole answer, Even that's
Mm.
not the whole question, but it's a better way.
Yeah. It's an emergent answer, and a better
Yes,
answer will emerge. Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. Can I close us out with that? I want
Yes,
to put
please.
some fire in people's bellies.
Yes, please, Rocco.
So there's a man called David White whose work I follow, and he has a tip. He said, when you go on stage, when you invite somebody onto the stage that's not used to speaking, their energy comes up above their shoulders into their head. They almost stand on their tiptoes, and everything they say becomes a lot less interesting.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
But what you actually want to do is the opposite. Slow down.
Yeah.
You want to bring the energy down below your shoulders into your body. You actually want to connect with the seat or the place that you stand.
Mm.
And suddenly, everything that you're saying has more,
Depth.
it's more relational, not
Mm.
transactional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so sometimes what we encounter in there is a kind of fire, and sometimes we encounter cold fire that's almost gone out. And it's
Mm.
important. Part of my job is to stoke that fire in you so that you can remember your fierceness again as well. Sacred anger, not bitterness, sacred anger.
Mm. Mm.
And this is the reflection on that. It said, what use to man? What use to man or woman is timid fear now? Here, when the darkness has come calling and the tide is rising, what use to man or woman is timid fear now? Do not fold your voice like linen in a drawer. Do not soften your edges to make mute company with cowards. Do not barter and trade away your wildness for their approval, their brittle, made in China piece. Your voice was born in the deep wells of life, raw, salt bright, roaring with all the unspent longing of men and women who died with their song still locked in their throats. You stand here now. You stand here now at the narrowing of the way, at this existential crossroads, and all the dead behind you, all the dead behind you. And ahead of you, the unborn yet to open their eyes to the world. And you're at the crossroads. And all the world will tell you here, now you must quiet down. You must settle in. This is how you become part of the solution. You just adapt and accept. You smooth the sharp corners of your knowing. That's what they want. But you must rage against that tutting and shushing, that insipid properness that you are taught to behave at in community, in public, and at work. That cowardice that they call leadership. Not in hatred, not in apish violence, but as a holy refusal, sacred disobedience against forgetting, against apathy. The apathy that you've allowed to take root and become your normal in your own body. You're not even at home in your own body. Not in hatred, not by apish violence, but as holy refusal. Sacred disobedience against forgetting, against apathy. Rage against the slow machine. Rage against that slow machine. The steady drowning of your wonder beneath the weight of small lives and smaller ambitions that the crowd is trying to usher you into. Speak as one who has seen the sun falter like an eclipse that won't end. Speak as one who has seen the sun falter and believes that something must burn bright during the desperate night of the Kali Yuga. Speak as one who has seen the sun falter and believes that something bright must burn during the desperate night of the Kali Yuga. Some candle, some fierce flicker. Speak as one who knows the bone-deep ache of social exile, to not belong to the group easily. Speak as one who knows the bone-deep ache of exile but will not let the song die in their chest. Speak for the child in the dark who is still without a name. Speak for the dead whose prayers we can still answer. We can still answer through our remembrance of what gave their lives meaning. Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself that you may not stand empty-handed at the end. The time for talk and half measures is over. You must go like the last dove from a shipwrecked ark. You must go like the last dove from a shipwrecked ark.
Rocco, that was so beautiful, man. I wanted you to end with that, but that inspired in me a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which I really want to
Please,
say now.
please.
It's in Sanskrit. So
Yes.
I'll say it in Sanskrit and
Say it
then
in
we'll
Sanskrit
translate.
and then
Yeah.
translate.
And ironically enough, that's the only verse that is by hearted
Memorize.
by me as a young kid. I don't know how, I don't know why, but that's one verse that's always stuck with me. The verse goes, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavti bharat abhyutdhanam dharmasya tadatmanam srijamiham. And what it means is every time there is a lot of adharm in this world, every time there's a lot of injustice, there's a lot of
Strife.
strife in this world, Oh, Arjun, that's Krishna addressing Arjun. He says, every time this happens in the world, I incarnate in this world to take back power from that strife, to take back power from that adharm and install dharma. And for a person who is too much into bhakti yoga, that would mean that Krishna is coming to save us from this strife. But in the paradigm that we're living in right now, this is an invitation for you to incarnate as Krishna,
Embody that
embody.
ideal.
That's it. That's it. And that's exactly what Rocco has talked about here. It's not idealistic. It's not optimistic. It's
It's
realistic.
necessary courage.
It's necessary courage, and it's not something where we want you to become teary-eyed about your religion. We're not talking about religion here. We're not talking about believing. We're talking about understanding. We're talking
We
about
don't need a way back to God. We need a way forward for humanity.
that's it. That's it. And if that's a
Speak.
godly way,
Yeah.
if that's a godly way, we can't help it. It is a godly way, right? You have to
Yes.
incarnate and
Yes.
embody as gods.
Because if the divine wanted anything for humanity, it was for it to become the crowning emergence of its own process.
Yeah.
But we are here now in the deepest, desperate night of the Kali Yuga, and I believe that something now needs to burn brightly and fiercely in that darkness.
Yeah.
And let mine be the lamp that lights the way. Let mine be the hand that reaches down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if I can't think like that, this is how I know that other people's arguments are full of shit and how I believe this one. Because I simply do the math. I say, if everybody behaved the way the stick sharpeners were recommending, we would all be sharpening sticks. And the way that we divide ourselves into us and them, into others, is along gender, along race, along nationality, along religion. There's no end to the way in which we can divide ourselves. There's no
Yeah.
end. And so if everyone was doing what were doing, we would all end up divided and angry and perpetuate this childish misery. But if everyone was thinking the way I just recommended, what could happen? What could happen? That is to me how I reason my way towards the necessary answer. Just like that.
That's
It's
it.
not moral, it's logical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
All
Rocco.
right, man.
We would like to thank Prachi and Yash and Ayushi. My wife also joined in. Hello, Ayushi.
Yay!
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. We appreciate the engagement. We hope you guys are here with us next week as well, because we're going to be doing this on a weekly basis every single Sunday.
Just help people understand. Every 2 weeks, we're doing retro and
Yeah.
refinement. So we're actually talking about the project mechanics. And
Yeah.
every other week, so next week, again, we'll be back to just talking about what's emerging in the field. And the nice thing is we're doing this agile. So it will be related to this topic in some way. It will be a continuation. We're not just going to hit you with new bits of cute information. It's going to be related so that there's this thread.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to be going live every day for 20 days. I started 2 days ago, so today is day 2. You can catch me on my YouTube channel and on Substack. And I'm just riffing for 20 minutes or so, literally about this kind of idea. But I'd like to progress it, and I'd like people to be there because I like to engage.
Yeah. I know, man.
Anyway, all
Yeah.
right,
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you again. Thank you, Rocco. And
let's
we'll.
close out the space, man. A
Yeah.
little bit intentional. So thank you, Chetan, for making this time. Thanks for the folks that came along for this. Just coming along and doing this is a casting vote for the project and for the better versions of ourselves to emerge. So I think that's worth acknowledging. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Okay, man.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rocco. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
So I stop there and I end the stream.